Yo, what's up, you guys? It's Jose from Patrick and Friends Music Company. I am your bass instructor. If you know me or if you remember me from previous videos, nice to see you again. If you don't, well, nice to meet you. So quick recap from the previous 3 lessons. We went over the basics of technique on upright. We went over the fundamental, things of the upright, like the bridge, the strings, their names, and all that stuff. We also went through some of the positions regarding half position, first position, and second position. And we went over the F major scale and G major scale to really kind of help solidify those positions. I hope you've been going over, some of those exercises. If you're new to this, I recommend you go back if you don't really understand just even the basics of the bass. So I recommend you go back and check out those first couple of lessons, and it'll just give you some quick, easy ways to practice technique with your right hand and your left hand and your positions. And like always, practice with the metronome, practice with the tuner. It is essential to play in tune and with good time. For this lesson, I want to really talk about getting into the third position. And with that is really, I want to just talk about the D major scale. I know we're kind of jumping around the scales. If you're further along in theory and stuff like that, I know it's kind of weird that I might be jumping around, but I just want to really explain the basic positions within the bass that you'll really be primarily playing in as you study music. When I first started learning upright, it was the first couple of positions that were really taught to me. So I'm just further sharing that knowledge. So let's jump into it, all right? So the D major scale, you have D, you have E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and then the octave D. So how to play that? I'm gonna play it real quick and then I'll break it down. You notice that unlike the first couple scales that we worked on, my first note isn't in the closed position. What I mean by closed position is that there is all the strings are you're using your hand to actually press a note on the bridge. Instead, or on the fingerboard. Instead, I'm starting with an open string. That's your first note. After that, you start with your index finger in half position, which would be your E. So that's half position. That's your first. So that's really what you're going to work on for the first 6 notes of that scale. You're going to be in this position right here. Using your open strings, you start with D, first finger on E, pinky on F sharp, open G, that's the 4th, index on your half position A on the G string. So here's A, B with your pinky. And then this is where we shift into what is known as the third position. Usually your index finger is on the C. So you got third position starts with index finger on the C. That's B and then your C. But within the D major scale, we have C sharp as we went over. So for that, you're going to use your middle finger and that's C sharp. Half step that is up here for F to F sharp. It's a similar motion with index finger and middle finger. So that's C sharp, and then to end the scale, you have your octave D, which is pinky within that same position. Now, the reason positions are so important is because, as you notice, there is no fret markers. So if you were tuned into the Patreon account within the Patrick and Friends Music Company, I talk about the electric bass and the differences between the electric and the upright. So one of the main differences between the electric and the upright are that there are no fret markers. Fret markers are really cool because they basically guide you or gives you like a map of where the notes are on the bass. On the upright, you don't have that, so you really have to use your ears and have your positions down to know where those notes are going to be, or at least, around what position, around where they're going to be on the bass, on the instrument that you're playing. If you're planning on doing this as a profession, sometimes you don't get to play the bass that you normally play, and every bass is different. As you transition from middle school to high school to college, all that, most of the time you're playing different basses, and every bass has a slightly different place of where a certain note is going to land on the bass. So positions help with that, because once you find out where that note is in tune within the bass and on the string, you carry that position, and that'll guide you through the rest of the bass. So back to the D major scale. You practice that over and over, and essentially you can get to where you don't have to think as much of where that note is pertaining to on the instrument. So I recommend you practice that slow, make sure it's in tune. You put a drone on. There's a couple great apps to use. If you go on the Apple Store or your Google Store, type in metronome. You could type in tuners with drones. You can probably even Google it, and something will pop up on the internet. If you go on YouTube, there's a lot of there's a lot of resources to your availability that are for free. So I recommend you just, practice it with the metronome, practice it with the drone, and really work on tying up everything that we've worked on throughout these lessons into these scales. And scales are very important, not just to work on intonation and all that, but it helps with walking bass lines, which we will talk about in future lessons. And we will tie up all the scales, the positions within certain bass lines and stuff like that. And we'll start talking about really getting more into the jazz side of the bass. I hope you practice that. I'll leave you with that information. Go over the stuff that we've been working on throughout the lessons, the previous exercises. Those are exercises that I still do to this day as a warm-up on shows, on gigs, wherever I'm playing. So I definitely recommend that you do the same. I'll see you on the next one, all right?